Hi everybody, it's Katie again from Alveston Park Friends, and welcome to our Monday, Day of the Moon broadcast. So our theme today is going to be about our natural satellite, the moon. Now, I've been really pleased at the fact that some of you have been getting in touch. Yesterday was quite overwhelming, both good and bad. I was a little bit frazzled yesterday, to say the least. But one thing I am over the moon with is that we actually stretched right across to South Africa and to the USA. Way beyond my expectations. So it's amazing that happened. Please continue to share. We want some more pins on the board. That would be absolutely great. Now, to kick us off, I'm going to just introduce you to somebody who was involved in a very unusual moon project, and that was called a moon bounce. So I'm just going to invite up, if I can find you, Tony Blackburn. He works at Jodrell Bank. And Jodrell Bank is a giant radio telescope on the Cheshire Plain. It's enormous. It looks like a giant's cornflake bowl. It's an incredible structure, and it's there to do radio astronomy. Hi, Tony. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Brilliant. So you were involved in a moon bounce. I think I've got a screen that you would quite like me to share, so I'm just going to do that now. Can you just tell us a little bit about Jodrell Bank and a little bit about what you did with the moon bounce there?
Yeah, from my perspective, Jodrell Bank is is run by the University of Manchester, and it is the premier site for radio astronomy in the UK. That's in my view. And we were involved in. We've got very sensitive receivers on the telescopes, and it can receive a mobile phone from Mars very easily. No problem. You could hear it, but there is a delay. I was involved in the project Moon Bounce, which is to send a signal from the Earth up to the moon and listen to it reflected back. You need quite a lot of power and a big radio telescope to send the signal, and probably an even bigger one to receive the very tiny signal that's reflected back from it. And you can see on the screen that we transmitted on one occasion from Cambridge and received at Jodrell Bank. So it's quite a large triangle if you think about it. And yeah, the power levels were quite big, but the actual receive level was minute. A very tiny signal came back after going all that way, which is 238,000 miles. And something to say about this: there is a delay in the signal arriving back at Jodrell Bank. In one direction, it's 1.28 seconds to get there, and another 1.28 seconds to get back. So there's a 2.586 second overall delay, and this has some good effects because you can, if you transmit a radio signal, you can and listen at the same time. You can actually hear your voice coming back, and this is a technique we used. We had it was part of a project by the Science Centre at Jodrell Bank, which had children to send poems and things up to the telescope, via a Skype link. This went via Skype link, which you can see at the bottom of the picture, up to our Cambridge telescope, which transmitted it. We can't transmit from the same site because it would damage our sensitive equipment. So you have to transmit from some other location. And Cambridge is about 180 miles away from from Jodrell Bank. So we transmitted from there, and the signal was reflected back, and people could hear themselves coming back as well, because they could hear themselves speak. They spoke into a microphone, and then we had a speaker to actually relay what was coming back, and that it was fantastic for them to hear their own voice coming back about 3 seconds later. There was another delay, which was the digital delay using Skype. With digital systems, there's always a delay, and the more complicated the systems, the larger the delay. Your TV picture is delayed by 2 or 3 seconds because of all the digital processing and what have you. So that was the idea behind it, and it worked. We've had another one recently, last year, or a year or two ago, about the first landing on the moon, but that was not using Cambridge. That was using a transmit dish in Dwingeloo, which is in Holland, the Netherlands, and they actually sent music up there, and we received it at Jodrell Bank.
So you were using the moon to send music?
Yeah, the music sounded a bit rough when it came back, but because the contours of the moon would interfere with the signal. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and now the technology has moved on. We can actually see the signals. We can. I think there's a link that Katie might have that shows the screen when receiving the signals. We can actually see the signals, so you can peek. You can move the telescope around until you get the best signal. You can do that in real time. So yeah, it's a marvelous project, and it also tests the sensitivity of the systems, because you can calculate how much you should have after you transmit and receive, the power levels and what have you. So you can actually calibrate your system. So it's a good exercise for the site to know what sort of sensitivity our equipment is, and help the public at the same time. And it was nice to see pictures. I was down at Cambridge doing that, but it was nice to see a video of the kids that were sending, not just kids, adults as well. And somebody played the guitar through it as well. So it was very informative, very good. Anyway, that's moon bounce, and people are doing this moon bounce all over the world. If you point a big telescope like the Lovell telescope at Jodrell Bank at the moon, and you look at the signals, there's always signals there, because there's always somebody in the world transmitting from Australia to Europe or something like that. They both have to be able to see the moon, but you can actually send messages like that via this method. But big telescopes, you need a big dish, 2 big dishes to do this, or a lot of power. So that's it, and it was very enjoyable.
Thank you ever so much for letting us in on that. It's absolutely fascinating project that seems like quite a lot of fun as well. I'm just going to say bye. Thanks very much for talking to us here.
Okay.
So, the moon. I promised you some moon mythology, and I needed cheering up yesterday, so I think you might like this. I will see if I can share that again. I was searching for moon myths. I didn't want to step on Derby and District Astronomical Society's toes. We'll be going to their amazing moon globe later on. But this really made me smile, okay? This is a giant moon rabbit. Can you see that? Okay, so this comes from many cultures are actually around the world, largely in the Far East. And this is just one happy bunny. This is how I felt about getting to different corners of the world, if you have corners of a sphere. And I could just imagine that, yeah, spending an afternoon just lying up, looking at the clouds would be a nice, nice thing. If you've ever had a look up at the clouds and seen a shape or something like that, some maybe a face or an animal or a tree, I'm sure you've all had a look up and seen something like this. This is a process called pareidolia, okay? And this is something that people have done with the moon. Over many thousands of years, people have looked up at the moon and they've seen maybe a face. The man in the moon is a popular thing to talk about. But in many cultures, they see a rabbit in the moon. And there's a lovely story about the rabbit. It's supposed to be a companion to a moon goddess, Changi, and is often depicted standing either as a rabbit or a hare, sometimes with a pestle and mortar, grinding something. Sometimes that is medicine. Sometimes that is dessert material. They would make rice cakes or things like that. There's a lovely story local to Beijing where there is a plague and the moon rabbit comes down to earth and cures everybody of the plague, doesn't want anything in return, and returns to the moon himself. And I like to think that the moon rabbit had a little something to do with this that somebody sent me. Thank you very much. You know who you are. Now, this changed my view of the moon completely. There we go. There is the moon. Thank you very much. There is a little challenge in here. There are two constellations here in the stars around. If you think you know what those constellations are, then you could put something in chat. And by the way, just a little thing about the chat. If you want to ask a question specifically, if you have a look along the bottom, you've got a separate little button that says ask a question. I'm going to be throwing some questions that way. So you can also write down, ask questions, and you can respond to them. You can vote for them in the question section as well. I'll be moving some across if you've got any as well, and we'll try and answer some at the end. See, as a kid, I was reliably informed that the moon was made of green cheese. Now, I thought that was a bit strange because, well, however hard I looked at the moon, it never quite looked green. Strangely, I never questioned the cheese part, okay? Never until a relative of mine insisted that soup came from the soup wells on the moon. I think she sort of saw the clangers as scientific documentary. And this confused me because I knew that soup was hot and baked potatoes were hot and cheese melted on the baked potatoes. Therefore, if you had soup in a cheesy moon, it might melt the moon. Now, I had never seen the clangers, ever. So this was a little bit confusing until I realized that's where the dragon came in. The dragon was there holding up the structure of the moon so that it didn't melt into the soup. Hey ho. But now my world's been turned upside down. The moon is quite clearly made of shortbread. So they even sent a little moonlander there just to confirm that it was made of shortbread. And I love the way that that fits in with the moon rabbit pummeling the rice for the rice cakes for dessert as well. I really do like that moon rabbit. Even the Apollo astronauts talked about the moon rabbit when they went on their journey to the moon. I closed my laptop down, so if you just bear with me, I might be able to find the little quote. Yeah, here we go. So this was a little conversation between NASA Mission Control and the crew of Apollo 11. Apollo 11, of course, was the first moon lander. Houston said, among the large headlines concerning Apollo this morning is one asking that you watch for a lovely girl with a big rabbit. An ancient legend says a beautiful Chinese girl called Chango has been living there for 4,000 years. It seems she was banished to the moon because she stole the pill of immortality from her husband. You might also look for her companion, a large Chinese rabbit who is easy to spot since he's always standing on his hind feet in the shade of a cinnamon tree. The name of the rabbit is not reported, to which the astronaut Michael Collins replies, okay, we'll keep a close eye out for the bunny girl. I love that. So, I'll show you one or two other things to do with the moon, which I just think are beautiful. Thank you very much to Corinne and Luke, and hi to Jack too, who sent me a lovely picture of a moon halo that was in a paper very, very recently. You might have seen one. There's a picture here. I couldn't use that picture. I could use this because I could credit it. This is where ice crystals in the atmosphere actually refract the light from the moon, and they cause this lovely, beautiful ring. There's a little bit of folklore about that suggests if you see this, then bad weather is on its way. Well, there's a shred of truth to that, because this phenomenon is caused by ice crystals in the atmosphere and cirrus clouds. And cirrus clouds often come just before weather fronts come in with bad weather. The other thing that I have to show you is a moonbow. We don't just get rainbows, we get moonbows too. And again, it's this refraction, that changing of direction of light as it travels from one thing, like the air, through another, like an ice crystal, or in this case, raindrops. So this isn't a rainbow. You can see up by the stars, by the sky there, these are actually stars. They're quite rare, but that's beautiful. And something else to look out for is the blood red of a lunar eclipse. Now, you might think that in an eclipse you don't see the moon at all, but we're back to our good old refraction, that changing of direction of light. As it goes through the atmosphere, it changes direction. And here the red light from the sun actually bends around so it bounces off the moon and back to us. So that's something to have a look out for. Do have a look out when it's a full, well, sorry, not when it's a full moon, when it's a new moon as well, for a final phenomenon called earthshine. Because we can see the moon because it reflects light back to us from the sun. So the sun's light goes to the moon bounces it back to us. Well, Earth shine's a little bit more convoluted. There, the sun shines on Earth, bounces off Earth, shines onto the moon, bounces off the moon and back to our eyes. Because of that, it's very, very faint, but it's nice to look out for. So, I'm just going to stop that screen share and I'm going to invite up Mike Dumlow from Derby and District Astronomical Society, who is going to actually give us a tour around the Astronomical Society's amazing moon globe. I'm just looking for you now, Mike. Do keep the questions rolling in. We'll try and answer some of those. Now, we're going to get Mike to share his screen. If that doesn't work, what I'm going to suggest is a quick email so I can share that if there's any problems at all. I'll be here. Hi, Mike.
Hello, can you see me?
We can see you, yeah. Do you want to have a go at
the screen share?
The screen share? If it doesn't work, give me a quick email. I'll put another of the astronomers on to answer some questions, maybe, and I can share it on mine, but I think this is going to be fine. So, as you're doing that, I'm just going to have a look up at the questions. Let's have a look at Ask a Question. Ah, lovely. Okay. Yeah, that's working really well. Yeah, we can see that.
Right, it should have a blue sky.
Yep, nice blue sky. Yeah.
Have you got a picture now?
Yep, we've got a picture now. That's perfect.
All right. Well, I'm sort of ready to start when you're ready.
Yeah. Okay. Off you go.
Right. So the talk tonight that I've put together, there's no particular order to this, but this is really about a globe that came in my direction about 25 years ago. The picture shows it. This is actually at the Space Centre in Leicester. I get invited. I normally take Anthony from the Society with me. Hope you're listening, Anthony. And this was taken, I think, last year. We get invited regularly to the Space Centre. There's been a few Apollo 50th anniversaries, the anniversary of Apollo 9 we went to, and various other ones. I think this was probably when they were doing a joint Helen Sharman and Tim Peake kind of event. That's another shot of the globe. This is one bit closer up, taken in my garden. The main reason I took it was because I was sort of worried in case somebody borrowed it without asking. And I thought, well, if I've got a sort of a picture of it, I can at least let people know what it looks like. And one of the things you might notice is that there's a few signatures on it, which I'll come to later. So this is the moon globe. It's British. It was made, I would say, in the middle to late 60s. And it was a guy who'd got his own cottage industry in Cornwall, somewhere near Penzance. He'd obviously made the molds, and then he was producing these globes, and they largely made of fiberglass. He made two sizes. The one that we have is the larger one. So he made one that was roughly a foot, 12 inches in diameter, and this one is just over 2 feet in diameter. which means that the circumference is about 2 meters. So it's can be a bit unwieldy. Now, they're not especially rare in that if you Google it, you'll find pictures of them. They were supplied to places like universities bought them, and schools, and that's the route it took in my direction. My Uncle David taught in a school on the outskirts of Derby. He was a science teacher, and when he came up for retirement, they gave him this moon globe. Now, the reason they gave it to him, my uncle was a bit mischievous, a bit of a joker. He got what you might call, he was a character. And they got this globe, which I'm not sure how it arrived at the school, but it had been stored in a storeroom, and it was broken. It had stuff put on top of it. It was broke nearly in half because the globe's made of 2 halves. There was a big tear in the back where it had been crushed in. The axis up the middle, because the moon doesn't have any tilt, if you make a moon globe, you can support it up the inside. And it was broken, and I think there was a bit of a mischievousness on the part of the school that they thought my uncle was an appropriate person to give it to as a retirement present. I'd seen it at his house, and he knew I was interested in astronomy, and I asked him. He said, well, it was a retirement present, so he was a bit reluctant. So he was. That's how it stayed for a little while. And then talking again, he sort of thought it was worthy of a larger audience, and I said that I thought I could put it together. That involved a new wooden rod up the inside, fixing the 2 halves together, mending the tear, and the lettering. They were very much in kit form. And hold on, let me get rid of the dog.
It's okay.
They're very much in kit form, and you could have them ready painted or paint them yourself. You could get them with the lettering on, or put the lettering on, which was letraset, and that didn't stay on the 5-glass too well. So my friend Graham Enzer helped me, and he touched up all the writing, the names of the curators, and that took quite a few hours. This is the picture of the smaller one on the right, and it came from this person whose surname was Whiteman, and you'll see it says general colouring and finishing instructions. So it's very much up to you to do it. But also, if you look at on the right, you can see the coloured dots, and these are where probes have landed on the moon. And on the box, although you can't read it, it says keep up to date with moon landing. So you could put your little blobs on as time progressed, and as he was supplying them, they'd be up to date up to that period. Yeah, so I've seen quite a few of these globes. I've seen them at the Space Centre. I've seen them on the internet. The ring around the side, the black ring, very few have got that. It's marked off in degrees. It's obviously got a proper technical name, but I don't know what that is. Now here's a close-up. And what you see on here is the writing that has been touched up. It's not that obvious, but the craters, especially where they're on the darker areas, are recessed. The higher bits are proud of the surface. Up near, I don't know if you can see my cursor. I'll stick it in the middle of Aristarchus just to see if it's lined up. And then just up to the left, there's the Schroeter Valley, which is an actual groove on the surface of the globe. So it's got quite a lot of detail going on. The red markers are made out of something, I presume it's insulating tape. But what's interesting is that you can see that they're painted over when the lunar sea has been painted. This is another one with where with Surveyor 1 was marked, and that's in our old friend Flamsteed crater. Flamsteed being from Derby and being the first astronomer royal. That's another area with some more Surveyor landing areas. So this was sort of showing what exploration of the moon had been done at the time. Now this slide shows the wider audience that this globe has been to over the years. I would say that it goes to certainly several events a year. We've got 4 of them there. The bottom left is the 40th anniversary of the Astronomical Society. The bottom right is an all-night one we did at the running track in Derby, which was raising money. Now, it's got a series of signatures on. It also says on this one, Lunar Sphere Productions England, which is what he was calling himself at the time. And these are in no particular order, but Patrick Moore was the first person that signed this globe. As you can see, that's slightly rubbing off. So we got him to sign the base, the wooden base as well. And just a little bit about Patrick Moore. I mean, he really is the main man in amateur British astronomy. He wrote books. He presented the sky at night for I'm not sure how many years, but I think it was about 50 years monthly, and that makes him the presenter of the program for the longest time with the same presenter. You can see his little typewriter just behind his arm. When my daughter was doing a project on astronomy, she wrote to him, asking him a few questions to put in a project. She sent it on the Monday. The reply came back on the Wednesday, and he was quite. He hadn't dashed it off. He put a bit of thought into it. Yeah, he'd done. It's appropriate. He's got his fingers on the moon. He produced some very good moon maps in the late 50s, early 60s, and these were used by NASA when they were exploring the moon. He was president of the British Astronomical Association for one period, and there's a catalogue similar to the Messier catalogue, which is called the Caldwell catalogue, that he drew up as well, which is noteworthy around the world. There's another scope with him. I mean, a picture with him with a scope. I think it's a Calvo on a different mount, but never mind. No go-to, but he did his observations with that scope, most of them, I think. Now, since we're on the moon, there's Patrick on the right. It's difficult to kind of overemphasize his presence. So at the time of the moon landings, the man in the middle was a BBC presenter, Cliff Mitchell-Moore. The gentleman on the left is James Burke. He was a Tomorrow's World presenter. And he had terrific access to the Apollo program and the scientists involved. The American TV would ask banal questions about what car do you drive, Mr. Astronaut. He would be asking about the techniques for landing, the propulsion systems, and the British coverage was really good, and I remember it well. Now, Patrick Moore also came to Derby quite often. This was the Derby Astronomy Week in 1984, which I'm not 100% sure, but I think it celebrated the 10 years of the Society. It's interesting that my first meeting that I went to was at the beginning of April, and this was soon after, but I wasn't able to go. That's a picture of Patrick with Jane Kirk on the left. She was the founder of the Derby and District Astronomical Society, and Arthur Tristram, who's still a member, and was actually the chairman when I joined. But he was always said that so he came to Derby several times that I know of. When he didn't do a lot of talks later on, he always said that he was willing to come at short notice. If a speaker let us down, we could ring him up, and he said he'd come. We never actually took him up on that. That's Patrick. I don't intend to say so much about the others. This is Alan Chapman. He's a really good speaker, probably one of the best speakers I've ever heard. I think this is at the Astrofest from the brickwork behind him. If anybody wanted a speaker to do anything, they'd contact Alan Chapman. Here he is, third from the left, with a bit of a motley crew surrounding him. I can see Brian, I can see Anthony. I think I'm there somewhere. So when Katie, our friend Katie, brought the Stargazing Live to Derby and built the replica of Herschel's 20-foot telescope, he was the obvious person to get involved. And it's just interesting to see the markings on the concrete that helped Katie mark out, and the paintings that were there under the base that are behind us standing there. Now this is Jim McDivitt. A lot of people have know that he was the first astronaut that I like the name, because I think it's the three I sounds in there, Jim McDivitt, and he was on I'm sorry, as it says there. This is a signature on the moon globe. Gemini 4 and Apollo 9. That's a stock photo of him. Gemini 4, that was the one that was famous for the first spacewalk, where Ed White went outside the spacecraft and did a spacewalk. I think I was about 7 at the time, and I couldn't understand how floating on the end of a umbilical cord, a tether or whatever, was walking, and to my way of thinking, he was just floating, but they called it a moonwalk, so we'll go with that. This is quite a interesting picture. So it's the three people holding hands I'm going to talk about. So that's Jim McDivitt on the bottom right, whose signature is on the globe. Looking straight at us in the center, that's Ed White. And then the one on the bottom left is Yuri Gagarin, who was the first person in space, the first Russian to orbit the Earth, and this was taken at the Paris Air Show. This signature on the moon globe is Jeffrey Hoffman from NASA, it says underneath. He chose to write on a very rough area, so it's not come out that neatly. This is a picture of him. He flew into space on 5 missions, all of them on the space shuttle. Probably the most interesting one is this is him on the end of the arm, and he was involved in the first Hubble repair mission. So when they launched the Hubble Space Telescope, it got defective optics, and this was the mission to make it produce clear pictures, which worked fairly well. So that was Jeffrey Hoffman. This was, I think, at the university when he came to talk to us, and that's just a picture of him signing the globe. He got to be an astronaut because he was previously an engineer, and I think he was famously ambidextrous, so he could use his left hand and didn't drop the little screws when he's taking the Hubble apart. I say these are in no particular order. This is Fred Hayes, Apollo 13 lunar module pilot. As you'll know, Apollo 13 had the problem on the way to the moon, and it became a rescue mission. They immediately abandoned the lunar landing. So that's Fred Hayes. There's a picture of him. He was a test pilot. Most of the astronauts were test pilots or military pilots of some description. His only flight was Apollo 13, but he did do the testing for the shuttle where they dropped it from an aircraft and to make sure it would glide down and land safely, and he was much involved in that. This is the picture of going back to Apollo 13, and this is the service module, and the area sort of on the right hand side is where the explosion was, blew the outer panels off, and that was after they'd separated. They got a picture and they could sort of have a clue what had happened, and that's Fred Hayes. Charlie Duke, he was, again, he's written lunar module pilot for Apollo 16, so he's walked on the moon. There's a picture of him. He, besides walking on the moon, he was also involved in the Apollo 11, the first moon landing. He was what they called the CAPSCOM, which meant that they communicated with the capsule, and the people that did that on the ground were all astronauts or trainee astronauts. So when Apollo 11 landed, he was talking to them. It was a time when they were getting desperately short of fuel. They were very close to having to abort the landing, and he was the first person to talk to them when they actually landed. And he famously said that the room was breathing again, and everybody was turning blue, holding their breaths. So that was Charlie Duke, who was also on Apollo 16, and that's him signing the globe. Now, this next signature, I don't think I have to say too much about him because most people know a little bit more about him. This is Buzz Aldrin. He was called Buzz because his brother couldn't, or somebody in his family couldn't say brother and said Buzz, so he became Buzz Aldrin and eventually changed his name to Buzz Aldrin. I always thought he was named after Buzz Lightyear, but it seems that wasn't the case. Here's a picture of him. So he was on the first trip to land on the moon with Neil Armstrong. He actually spoke the first words after they landed on the moon. He was helping with the navigation, and they had a probe which made contact with the moon, so they knew when to stop the engines. And he says contact, and that's the first word spoken after they contacted the moon. This is a very famous photograph taken by Neil Armstrong. I think Neil Armstrong had the camera most of the time, so there's very few pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon, and quite a lot of Buzz Aldrin. Now, jumping around again, this is quite funny. Again, this is one that signed the base as well. This is Colin Pillinger, who you may remember from Beagle 2, which was a British probe getting a lift on an American probe to Mars. So here's a picture of Colin. This shows Beagle 2. So it landed as a disc, and then the petals opened out. And some of you will remember a Christmas day when we were waiting for the signal to come back to say it had landed, and it never arrived. And then some years later, after Colin's death, this picture was taken by a Mars orbiter. Admittedly, it's not very clear, and just to before anybody wonders, the word Beagle 2 was put on afterwards. And then there's a thing that sort of shows you that it didn't open up fully. So, and the last thing to happen would have been the radio antenna was to lift up. So it got very, very close to working. It landed well, it just didn't unfold properly. So it was sort of a success, but not quite. This is signature, and it says Jerry Griffin, Flight Director, Gold Team. So when the astronauts were on the moon, or going to the moon, there was somebody in charge on Earth, and because it was 24 hours, they had various shifts or various team names, and he was on Gold Team. This is a photograph with him with his hand in the air. This was a scene replicated in the film Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks. Perhaps slightly more famous in the film is the guy next to him in the white waistcoat, which is Gene Kranz, who was flight director, the overall one for Apollo 11 and Apollo 13, I think. But Jerry Griffin went right through from the pre-Apollo Gemini probes right through to Skylab. Had a very interesting chat with him. Now I come to Alan Bean, Apollo 12. So that's his signature. And again, you can see the little squares of colour for different things. The red is Russian, the white is American. I think the blue, I think that was the proposed landing site for Apollo 13, which is a story in itself. Now, this is Alan Bean. He flew on Apollo 12, later went on to Skylab 3. This is one of my favourite photographs. So he went on to the moon on Apollo 12 with Pete Conrad. I couldn't actually tell you honestly whether that's Pete Conrad or Alan Bean, but on the horizon is the lunar module from Apollo 12, and this is one of the surveyors that's marked on the. He stood next to a craft that had been sent 3 years. Whoops, 3 years. Here we are. The craft he's standing next to had been on the moon for 3 years, and they'd gone to retrieve a camera and bring it back to see how it had stood up to the conditions on the moon. So the idea was they got to land within walking distance. So when I got him to sign it, if you look under where it says Apollo, there's a, I don't know if you can see the cursor, but there's an arrow pointing, and he said, where do you want me to sign it? And I said, well, try and get as close as you can to Surveyor 3. So he drew the little arrow. He went on to do a few paintings. That's his art studio and his paintings. This is one that's typical of his style. He always used to press his boot into the painting, every painting he did, and his geological hammer. So each of his paintings theoretically has got a little bit of moon dust involved in it. This was when I went to, I met Alan Bean. He's the one seated behind the table. That's me on the left. The guy standing looking at the moon, that's Gene Cernan from Apollo 17. That's another one of Gene Cernan. He'd just done his 3rd walk on the moon, and he was the last person to leave footprints on the moon. They say he's the last man on the moon. I prefer to say he's the most recent person on the moon. Next year, that'll be coming up to 50 years. So it's been a while. We thought we'd be back within 10 years, and we're still waiting. So that's him as he's just come in for the last time. The next one is him on the moon with the lunar rover. See the footprints in the lunar soil. Now, going back to this picture, what he's talking about there, he's turning the moon globe round, and he's trying to work out where they came in and where they landed. So he sort of traced his route over the various parts of the moon, and he traced it, and then he managed to find out where he landed. I don't know if my cursor will work, but I think it's just about there, between Tranquility and the one above, just on that rough area there. But they had a real bit of banter. So Gene Cernan was saying, you won't sell me any of your pictures, to which Alan Bean seated was saying, well, you should have bought one when I offered you one when they were cheaper. So they had they're obviously very good friends, and I like them a lot. Now we come to me on the left, obviously. I mentioned that the globe came from my uncle. That's my Uncle David on the right. And he regularly had a look at the moon, but this time I'd taken him. I suppose I did go for a photograph, and we talked about who'd signed it and the various things that involved it. So a little bit about my Uncle David. He's my mum's brother. He was also my godfather. He gave me a Bible with an inscription for my christening. He was a science teacher. He got an absolute quest for knowledge, and he also liked telling people stories or interesting factual stories. He was an excellent speaker, I would say it's probably a raconteur. When we had family occasions of virtually any description, he would do a talk. He did the speech at my 21st birthday, and I used to see him quite often. He'd come and visit, sort of on the way to something else probably, and at times I'd see him weekly. And I was just thinking how different it would be if the moon globe hadn't have come from him in my direction. I wouldn't be doing this talk now. I wouldn't have met so many members of the public. It's always a talking point, the globe, as it goes to nearly all of our public dues. And I wouldn't have been able to meet all the people that have signed it. All these sort of heroes of different people. But to me, my uncle David is certainly a hero to me. So I'd like to dedicate the talk. And that's it. Any questions? Is anybody still listening? Hold on, let's see if I can get you back. Ah, I can see myself. I couldn't see myself at all when I was talking. Just to say that the globe is here behind me at the moment. I don't think I can hear you, Katie.
Sorry, I muted myself, and I forgot to unmute myself yet again. I keep doing that. That was a fantastic talk, Mike. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to try and make you bigger again.
I was going to say it's only when you do a talk like that you realise what a fantastic journey it's taking you on.
Yeah, absolutely. I just put in the comments that, you know, some people dream of going to the moon. You've actually been on real adventures with the moon. It's absolutely incredible.
What happens when you meet these people and they sign? There is a financial transaction, but for that you get to talk to them. Some of them, I mean, Jerry Griffin, I bet I talked to him for about half an hour, and you get to meet people and talk to them, and it's really special moments.
I'm just going to try and invite some more of you up here. I'm just going to try. I might have to say bye momentarily to you, Mike, because there's
that's fine. Yeah.
Third video. I just want to try and close that. Oh no, you haven't gone anywhere. That's brilliant. You're still there. Brian, I'm just going to invite you on as well, and Peter, if I can invite you up too. Brian's just asked, you forgot to mention how it got a piece of moon rock in it.
Yes, it does, yes. I didn't want to say too much, but it was repaired originally. It had to go through another refurbishment, not mentioning anybody's name, but so it's freely available for people to borrow for events in the society, and that's what had happened. And there was a little bit of an accident, so there was another bit of repair work went on. And my friend Graham, he's very much into meteorites and moon meteorites. That's rocks that maybe got blasted off the moon when a crater was formed, but have landed on Earth and then have been found. They may have spent.
Just trying to get a bit more light.
May have spent billions of years in space before they landed on Earth, and he has some bits of moon rock, and there is some moon rock actually on the surface of it, which I'd be willing to show you, but perhaps not show everybody all at once.
Brilliant. I've invited more people up. I think I can still squeeze one more person in if there's anybody I've missed out. Donald, thank you. I'll just get you up. Lovely message just popped in from Judy, who says that she's seen this moon several times at previous star parties. It's really good to hear all about it at last. I feel the same way. I always go wow every time I see it, but to hear where it's been and who's been involved has just been incredible. Thank you, Mike.
There was one or two got away as well, but I probably haven't thought to mention them. I've chased a few people that I didn't quite catch. It was very strange doing a talk with no, in sort of total silence. I had no idea whether I was still on or not. So I hope it was okay.
No, it was brilliant. Thank you. Roger, I'm still getting problems. I'm trying to bring you up. It just says rejected. I'll re-invite you again. I'll remove and re-invite probably. I am trying. I really am. I'm noticing that I'm getting a little echoey, so I'm going to try and keep quiet. We have got loads of questions. I know some of you have been answering in the background. That's fab, but I just thought that I could hand over to you, and you could have a go at answering some of them. The most popular one is from Starbear, who says that I heard the Earth has 3 moons, including something we call dust moons. Do we know much about them? I don't. Does anybody else? Donald does, but we can't get him up.
Yeah, just say the question again.
Just bear with me. So the question is, I heard that the Earth has 3 moons, including something called dust moons. Do we know much about them? And sorry, it's a tricky one, and I am trying to...
I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but I know obviously there's the moon, and then if you look it up, they find them, they come and they disappear, but I think there's about 4, and one of them is in a strange sort of horseshoe, sort of resonance orbit, so that it goes sort of most of the way round, and then it turns around and comes back, and it keeps repeating that. So there are these other moons of natural satellites of the Earth, yes. I don't know the names of them though.
That's absolutely absolutely fine. Just toggling my mic on.
Yeah,
Donald's just about to come on. I really want to see if he's got anything. Starbear says somebody has answered that. Thank you, and that somebody I know is Donald. I chose the wrong question with the wrong people at the time. My mistake. No worries. Here we go. Shall we go for another question just whilst we wait? Oh, here.
Hello, Don.
Hi there.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
Hi. Do you want to add anything to the 3 moons, the dust moons, just so that everyone can hear something?
It was something that was observed by a Polish astronomer in, I think, around 1960-65. And he had reported seeing these 2 dust clouds. It was then confirmed by NASA a few years ago, and that's about all I know about it. It's basically 2 large dust clouds that they refer to as moons. They are not solid objects. NASA's quite concerned because it could cause problems with navigation in the future. That's about all I know, but it's an excellent question, Starbear.
Brilliant. I've got a question here from Steve Webster. Is it true that the moon is moving away from the Earth at a rate of about 4 centimeters per year? If so, are there any models looking 100 years plus into the future on how it will affect things like our sea and ocean tides? Again, I've got no clue. I'll hand over to you again.
I looked this up. Can you hear me all right?
yes.
Okay. I looked this one up. Apparently, it's about 3.8 centimeters per annum, and it's at that rate. It's not going to affect the Earth for a very, 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 very long time. And if we were around over that very, very long time, we'd probably the changes would be imperceptible. The moon's got to move quite a way away before it has any significant effect on the Earth. and then it'll affect the tides, it'll affect the wobble of the Earth. The Earth might become a little bit more unstable, but we're talking about a long time in the future.
Cool.
I did put a little note on there as 3.8 or 4 centimeters a year is about 4 times the rate at which your fingernails grow. So imagine your 4 fingers add up the total length of the nail in a year, and that's how far the moon has moved away from you in the year. It's not a great distance, is it?
Brilliant, thank you. Got a nice one here from Carl. Is it possible to permanently live on the moon, and what effect would it have on the body? Anybody want to take that one? I'm expecting osteoporosis to be a bit of a problem.
Well, I think that in the future we've got to go back to the moon to look at possibly putting some sort of a habitat there for science, if nothing else. So, and there are lava tubes on the moon, I do believe, that would protect them from solar radiation to a certain extent. But like you said, you know, the effect on your muscles and bone degradation is still going to be the same because it's got less gravity.
Sure, thank you for that one.
I mean, it wouldn't be very nice to live on the moon, would it? I mean, there's nothing happening on the moon. There's no nightclubs. There's no cinema. You know, there's just no atmosphere there at all, is there?
Well, you should know, Peter. You went. You've been on holiday to the moon.
I did go on holiday to the moon.
Ian Russell has just put something, I believe the USA is drifting away from Britain about 1 centimetre per year. Yeah, sure, 1 or 2 centimetres, because the tectonic plates are moving away from each other. If you think about the mid-Atlantic ridge, I'll be talking a little bit about that later on in Fire Ants and Aliens later in the week. I had a question that I'm just going to throw out there because I was really excited by the recent moon landings done by China. Which country do you think is most likely to send people to the moon next, or do you think it'll actually be a private company? I'm really excited by what China's doing at the moment. They seem to be really pushing things forward, but it would be really interesting to hear what the rest of you think about that.
Perhaps it'd be better if you asked one of us.
Well, I think China's going to be the next people on the moon, but it seems to me a little ironic that America have decided to go back now that the Chinese are there. So, you know, I think we've got a new space race now between China and America.
There seems to be a big scramble as well for mineral rights and mineral mining on the moon. So China and the USA, I think, are about equal partners at the moment. Russia possibly, but I think China is the major threat. So.
Okay, I just had something really nice through from Kay. She says, muscle mass would decrease and bones would deteriorate in low gravity unless suits of genetic modifications could be developed to compensate for the low gravity. That's a really interesting idea, the idea of genetically modifying ourselves so that we're better adapted to go on the moon. Maybe that is our future, who knows? I don't know much about that at all, but interesting thoughts there. One thing I
noticed, could ask. One of our speakers does work in the space medication thing, so next time he comes back we might ask him.
That'd be really good.
I think we will see genetic selection but not genetic modification because it is illegal.
Maybe not in China. Yeah, there was all this selection that, I mean, the astronauts had to go through very thorough selection processes. They didn't have just anybody.
It's difficult to see how Darwinian evolution could take place on the moon. You know, it's taken millions and millions and millions of years for hominids to evolve to what we are. I just can't see it happening. Genetic modification at all. It's a nonsense.
Okay, there's one here, again from Kay. Thanks for all your questions, Kay. It's amazing. I have got no idea about this one at all. Is there a geological or astrophysical explanation for this strange Ryder crater pyramid-shaped structure spotted on the moon? Do any of you know anything about that at all?
No.
Sorry, Katie. When I saw this question up, I had a look to see what was anything online. There seem to be two main theories. The first one, which is probably more likely, is that there was a double impact fairly soon after the other. What fairly soon is, I don't know, but in geological terms, fairly soon could be anything from 100 years to 1,000,000 years. But the theory is that there was an impact, creating an impact crater, and often on an impact crater you get the central plateau plane will bounce back up and rise up. They think there's been a second impact to deform that central peak. The other theory was that something came in at a glancing angle, a low glancing angle, and that could account for the shape of the peak. But it's a perfectly natural phenomenon.
That's a brilliant answer.
So Peter, Elvis Presley didn't build it?
No, Don. No. Now, both of you, sorry to disappoint our viewers, but neither you nor I believe that at all.
Brilliant. One of the things that I think is quite amazing to look at, when you look at the moon, you can see how many times it's been hit by stuff, okay, bits of rock and everything like that. But of course, the moon's in the same part of space as the Earth, so Earth gets hit just as much as the moon, except we've got the atmosphere that starts to burn things up and stops many of the smaller things from getting to the surface. But am I right in thinking that most of the craters were made in the early solar system?
Yes, the surface of the moon is a very old surface. Very little has happened in a major sort of way for billions of years. So I think most of the craters were formed in what they called the late heavy bombardment, which is, don't actually know how long ago, but about 4 billion years, or perhaps 3.5 billion years. This is part of the reason for the appearance of the moon. All the dark areas, which they originally thought were seas, they are sort of impact craters that have filled up from below with lava, which is solidified as basalt rock, and that's what produces the dark areas. But the moon is essentially dead now, and there's no erosion, no weather to smooth things out. I mean, it's thought that the boot prints of the astronauts are going to survive for a long, long time. And there's no lava coming up anymore or anything like that. So the surface is pretty much as it was several thousand million years ago. Not to say that there aren't meteor impacts. These are sometimes seen as flashes of light, transient lunar whatever occurrences. So it's a very old surface. And like you say, the Earth would have been battered very much the same, and perhaps more so. I mean, not just because it's bigger, but it's got higher gravity, so it's likely on a marginal effect to attract more stuff that's flying through through the area.
Brilliant. I'm going to throw one more question out that was asked by Claire earlier on. It's basically two questions. Please guess. I like the please guess because there's no pressure to get it right. Please guess when we'll go back to the moon and when the first woman will walk on it. She says 2025. Do you think it would be earlier than that or later than that? The women question is quite interesting. I think we're getting places, but I was not best pleased when I heard about the delay to the all-women spacewalk. I think it was last year or the year before, 2019. It did go ahead, which was absolutely amazing, but it was delayed for several months because NASA didn't actually have enough spacesuits to fit both of the women. So they made it happen in the end, but they had to sub somebody in for the first mission. It just suggests that we've got a little way to go before these things become as easy as they are for men. But I think that the progress is being made. But I'll just hand it over to the rest of you. When do you think people will go back to the moon? And is it going to be very long before a woman actually walks on it?
Well, the Americans have got plans to go back to the moon, haven't they now? So within the next decade, I should imagine, that because they've already done it, they know how to do it. So and more women are going into space now. So I don't see as any reason why it should be a man or a woman that's the next person to actually walk on the moon. But certainly within the next decade, I would have thought.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'd just like to say that the next cruise, for various reasons, will be much more diverse in all ways than the narrow selection that went 50 years ago.
Mm.
And I have to say, I have to mention on that note, the first Britain in space was a woman. Helen Sharman went up there many, many years ago.
It's a pity Anthony isn't here now.
Yeah, she was one of the ones that got away.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you ask people.
Can I say goodbye? I'll have to disappear because in about 2 minutes I have to set up another meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
Peter, see you later.
Okay. Thanks very
Bye-bye.
much. Lovely to be part of this. Great stuff.
Yeah,
see you later, mate.
Peter. I think we'll wrap it up here as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your input. Thanks for keeping the chat going. Thank you, just wonderful Derby District Astronomical Society. You have been fantastic. I'm in awe of that moon globe. I was before, but now you just brought the whole adventure of the moon globe to life with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's made many trips to Alveston Park, and I've spent many a happy hour talking to people about it, but you've always been very busy on the evening.
Yeah, I've used to be running around.
Yeah, so.
I noticed the echo's gone now that Peter has. I don't know if that's significant.
Maybe. Just to let people know what's coming up, where are we? We're on Monday, Moon Day. Tuesday is Day of Mars. Okay, I'll get a bit more sinister with Phobos and Deimos, the moons of Mars. And we're going to show one of the video shorts that Derby Museums have made for us this time about John Flamsteed and his star atlas. And then we're going to have fantastic Q&A session. So bring all your questions to that. We've tried to keep it moon related today, but you can come and ask anything astronomical tomorrow. On Wednesday, it's Mercury, followed by Fire, Ice and Aliens. Thursday, we've got Jupiter, followed by discussion on telescopes or binoculars. If you're interested in investing in something or borrowing something. I'm saying that because I'm thinking of one of the comets that was discovered by a Spanish dentist with his mate's borrowed telescope, which is an absolutely great story. But telescopes or binoculars, which is best? More info on Thursday. Friday, we've got Venus and then the life cycle of stars, where I squish a few billion years into about 25 minutes. Saturday is the day of Saturn, best rings in the solar system, and it's also the hidden light, where Derby and District Astronomical Society will be back telling you about infrared astronomy and the James Webb Telescope. That's great. And then on Sunday, we've got award-winning science communicator Ian Russell, who I've noticed has been hanging out with us, which is great. Hi, Ian. He's going to try and get us to imagine the enormous distances in space. 6 p.m. tomorrow. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, just Don, can I just ask Don a question?
Yeah, no problem.
Don, did you get the email from that Astro Boost with all the links and everything?
About a week ago.
Well, yeah, within the last week, yeah, it came through.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you got it. It's got all the videos and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, Katie, yeah. Oh, sorry, Katie. I've just got a quick comment. There was a question about go-to telescopes came up tonight, and I did respond to it, but we'll be covering that on Thursday. So if whoever's asked that, if they're on Thursday, we can talk about that.
That's brilliant. And I'll see you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike. Well done.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night. Cheers.
That's all.